Over the past couple of years, I've no-clipped my way outside almost every single Call of Duty Zombies map. There's a few more left to do, and we'll be getting to those shortly, but in my journeys beyond the barriers, there's been quite a few strange things to find along the way. Sometimes there's weird effects you'll find, and other times there's things out there that just make no sense at all. And today, we're going through Black Ops 3 map by map to show these off, with some build-up included in there, but some of these examples may be part of unsolved Easter eggs, while others, well, they might be a glimpse into the early stages of the map's development. But what all of these top examples have in common, at least at the time of making this video, is I have no idea why they're there. Loading on into Shadows of Evil here, of course, there is a ton of detail in this map. Lots of really cool things to point out, and also some really interesting things to find outside the map. But starting with something that really isn't that strange at all, right here underneath spawn, we'll find a lineup of models. The gate worms and a bunch of stuff that's used for the Easter egg, as well as a teleporter box here too. And although this is one of the only maps that has all of its Easter egg parts just lined up like this, it really isn't all that strange that they're here. Because it makes perfect sense that these models have to be stored somewhere, and that whenever you do an Easter egg step, they'll be teleported from here to wherever they need to be. Still though, it is pretty cool that we can just walk down here and pick them all up. But leading to something that is much more strange, down here at the docks, well of course there are a few boats just floating about. They do have collision, which is pretty cool, and there's even like some little interiors here. But as far as I know, they're not used for any sort of Easter egg step, and that's important because right underneath them, we can find a copy of each one of the boats. Which this makes absolutely no sense to me. I really don't know why they're here. As far as I know, they have no purpose, and they seem to be the exact same model. They're not like destroyed versions of them, or even rotated in a different direction. They're the exact thing. They do not have collision, unlike their counterpart, and as far as I know, they are completely unused and never see the light of day. So I would say that this is indeed very strange, but it gets a lot weirder. For our next example here, if we go on back to spawn and then look up on top of a building above it, there's just a random orb up there. And if we get nice and close, I mean, it's just a shiny ball. It makes absolutely no sense. It's not the only one of its kind, but it is the only one we can get close to before leaving the sun volume and everything turning white. But you can see in the distance that there are other buildings with the same exact orb on top of them. A very strange detail of Shadows of Evil that makes absolutely no sense to me. Yeah, I'm not sure what the lore here is on why they'd put an orb on top of a building in Morgue City, but if you guys do, then let me know down in the comments. But now for the strangest thing outside Shadows of Evil. After doing all 4 rituals, grabbing the gate worms, and then opening Pack-a-Punch, the entire skybox of Shadows of Evil changes. And floating above us is what looks like a giant octopus apothecon type creature, which I suppose is pretty damn weird in itself. But if we use no-clip and fly all the way to it, we'll find what is by far the weirdest thing on Shadows of Evil. We can get to the far side of this creature and see that it has some sort of face, with eyeballs opening, closing, and a very strange looking shape on the backside. Yeah, it's pretty wild. And of course, you never normally get to see this, and it's all white because we are very far outside of the sun volume. In fact, so far that you can't see the map down there anymore. This thing is huge, and it is really far out here. But I'm not sure how you could ever argue that this is not the weirdest thing on Shadows of Evil. It's got what looks like 2 eyeballs and then this vertical mouth that just opens and closes randomly. And this thing is animated the entire time you're playing. And the eyeballs themselves, as well as the mouth ball, also rotate too. They have their own animation. And just to show how big this thing is, here is me in free fall speed falling away from it. It's absolutely massive. We're still right next to one of its tentacles. And the map, well, yeah, still nowhere in sight. But I suppose it's time for us to go ahead and head on out of Shadows of Evil now and go on over to Eisendrache to check out some more really strange things. But the truth is with this map is there's really nothing that's all that weird. Certainly nothing as weird as Shadows of Evil. Like, we could say, oh, well, there's this completely detached teleporter room, but of course this is used for the Easter eggs, so there's nothing really weird about that at all. It's actually kind of cool. And like the boss fight arena itself, well, it's pretty standard. There's nothing too crazy about it. There's 2 skyboxes in this map, one underneath the map that you only get to see after you complete the entire Easter egg with that blown up moon in the distance, but again, really not all that weird. And honestly, like, the strangest thing is this bell in the clock tower here is floating and not attached to anything. Yeah, that's kind of the best I got. The developers did a really good job with this map and sort of tidying it up and making sure none of those random bits and pieces are just left outside the map. I was gonna skip this map entirely, but I sort of felt for completionist's sake we'd put it in here and show you guys that there's really nothing all that strange. And although it was a very quick visit, I suppose it's time for us to get on out of here and go find some more weird stuff. Because unlike Der Eisendrache, Zetsubou does indeed have some things to find. And starting off with something pretty simple here, if we fly up in the air of Zetsubou and take a look like over the bunker, for instance, there's this really empty area. Of course, what we're looking at is the top of the bunker, however, there's just no detail up here. It's just textured flat concrete. And of course, the player is never meant to see this, but it does give this sort of weird, eerie feeling being up here in this really liminal space. And it should be noted as well that the bottom side of this brush is not used at all. So although you could argue that it's like the roof of this place, it's not exactly connected to the area beneath it, and it seems like this is just something to cover the entire thing up. But I mean, that's pretty strange. Little side note, I mean, this is a window location, but from the outside, looks wild, dude. And although this is not really like an out-of-place thing, if we go down to the actual boss fight arena early and fly on in, we do get a look at an armless boss, which is really strange in itself and looks really weird seeing this guy here motionless and with no arms stretching outside of his jail cell. Kind of strange, but again, probably not the weirdest thing we could find. But going a little bit further towards the strange and unused random bits outside the map, right here underneath spawn, well, we can find a lineup of all the perks. And of course, these are used, they fly down from the sky as you go through a match. But what has always been quite a bit weirder to me is over here, there are two more perks just sitting inside of each other. Double tap and quick revive. And as far as I can tell, there is absolutely no reason for these two perks to be here. Especially considering there are copies of these models right here in the lineup. So I really don't know why they're here, and it is very strange that they are. But there's one more thing that's just a bit weirder than that. For our final thing, if we go out into the swamp here, far outside the map, or at least about as far as we get, there is a boat that looks a lot like the ones from Shadows of Evil. In fact, I think it's the same model, but sort of textured a bit differently. It does not have any collision, however, right underneath it, there is this random plate of grass. Another brush just floating out here on its lonesome with absolutely no purpose. And not only that, but there's another one floating right above it. A very small section of brush that you can actually walk on and end up swimming out here because of it. Yeah, I know it's not the back of a monster from Shadows of Evil, I get that, but it is quite a bit more useless than it. It's pretty weird that it's here, and I do have some guesses, like maybe this was a little test area for the map, like before any of it was built, or perhaps there was something here once upon a time, and we'll just never know. But either way, very strange. But that is it for Zetsubou, so let's go ahead and head on to Gorod Krovi and see what we can find there. For our first thing that is quite strange here on Gorod Krovi is there is a lot of empty unused rooms. For instance, this one right here that you can indeed stand on and walk in, although its walls and floors sort of get called in and out as you walk through it. But this room is definitely not the only one, even in just this department building. I mean, there's ones like this that are open to the outside and used as ambiance. But we can see here, for instance, on the other side of the building, there is a massive room here that completely goes unnoticed. Its windows are opaque, and you can't see through them, and there's even like a little door here. Although from the outside, it definitely doesn't look like a door. This room does have a doorway, although on the other side, there isn't a door either, and it really makes me wonder why this space is here. Over here in the corner of the room, we can see a hole that leads back down below it, and one above us as well. And the reason that this is here is simply just for the Wonder Fizz, so that its effects can reach the skybox, and sort of makes sense, I suppose. But again, being able to see in there, well, you don't need some big room to be able to do so. In fact, if you look closely, you see some errors from inside of here. There's no reason that they shouldn't have just cut this off and made it its own room, and all of this definitely does not need to be here. But nevertheless, I am very glad that it is. I think it's super cool, although a bit weird. And if we fly on over to the Pack-a-Punch building, we can see something very similar here, with, again, a whole bunch of unused space. This one even having like an extra wall here in the middle that's textured differently on both sides. And you might think, well, it's because of the windows, right? You can see this from outside. Again, it's some ambiance, but nope, the windows are opaque. Well, second thought, okay, there's a hole in the roof. Perhaps you can see it from in here. Nope, the doors are closed and there actually isn't even any connection to this space at all. And just as an extra note, these floors here are not the ceiling of something below it. It seems that these rooms are completely unused. Perhaps there was going to be a third floor at some point to this Pack-a-Punch building, and maybe to the department store as well over there. But either way, what's left behind is some very strange liminal space. But heading on back over towards spawn, things can definitely get quite a bit weirder than that. In the intro cutscene for Gorod Krovi, we see Nikolai inside of a mech suit get thrown by a dragon into a building, and then we spawn into the map. Well, if we fly on out of here, we can indeed find him, and the weird part about this is if we no-clip inside of his head, we can see that it is very strangely shaped underneath that cap. It does indeed have a hair texture under there, and it has this really strange slope to it. Almost like comes out as like a duckbill hat or something. Really weird. And of course we can see his mouth as well inside of here, which his tongue is actually quite well textured. And he does indeed have an idle animation. We just look into his eyes as he blinks at us. Kinda strange, but not the weirdest that we'll find here on Gorod. Because if we go down to the docks, and although I have shown this somewhat recently, there is a floating telephone pole out here for absolutely no reason. A very strange detail, and you can normally see this from inside the map, although part of it is called out and what's left behind is just the top end of it. I really don't know why it's here, but my best guess is there could have been a bunch of models here at some point, and this just got left behind in development. Or perhaps that there was going to be land here, and they decided to make a big-ass river instead. Either way, really strange. Just a telephone pole floating above the water. But for number one, it's gotta go to something that I found way back in the series outside. After searching through this broken city of Stalingrad, over here there is a very liminal area. A very plain textured brush just sitting on out here, but not only that, also a trap piece just sitting on its lonesome. And as far as I know, for absolutely no reason. You can't interact with it, it doesn't have collision, and I don't think there's anything that this is replacing in the map throughout the experience. Like, I don't think this is stored for something, at least that I know of. But I guess let me know down in the comment section if you think this could be for something, but as far as I know, it's completely unused. And again, absolutely no clue why it's here. The developers clearly left it behind, and it really makes me wonder why and what was here originally. Either way, that is definitely the weirdest thing here on Gorod Krovi, or at least certainly the most out of place thing. But that is it for Gorod Krovi, so let's head on over to Revelations and see if we can find some more weird stuff. And for the first thing here on Revelations, we need to fly on up to the star. Because as we get closer and closer to this massive thing and actually enter inside of it, there is a really weird effect that happens on the screen. It almost looks like we're inside of a black hole or something, with the event horizon just orbiting here around us. It's a really strange effect, and we can look back at the map, and there it is down there. But I gotta say, this is probably one of the strangest effects I have found outside of Call of Duty. And you can indeed make that thing rotate around you in all kinds of ways, and oh my god, is it wild. I'm pretty sure it is always facing the player, and because of that, this happens. And I gotta say, it is quite strange. And although I think this is awesome, and in all honesty, I think this is probably one of my favorites of this video, it's definitely not the weirdest, because there is an explanation to why it looks that way. The developers definitely made some pretty awesome effects for this map. But as for something I do not know the use of, at least at this point, if we fly underneath the map here of the Eisendrache section of Revelations, we'll find some really strange blue objects. One of them here is simply just a rectangle, and the other one is a little bit of a more complicated polygon, but again, I have no idea why they're here. My best guess is it's something Easter egg related, perhaps something to do with the boss fight, so there might be an explanation to these things. And if you guys know, please let me know down in the comment section, because I'd love to throw these guys in the Dev Tricks and Secrets with an actual explanation sometime. But for now, they're just a weird oddity down here underneath the map. And speaking of weird oddities, let's go to our final one. The thing that I'm standing on top of right now is the boss fight arena, which I suppose becomes a little bit more obvious when I stand here. And it is really cool to be able to take a look at this without having the boss fight go on, and I guess needing to do the Easter egg either. You can see how it's constructed and get inside of this little apothecon guy as well. It looks like he even has a little bit of blue cube nature going on. But in all honesty, this is not the strange part. There's nothing really all that weird about this. Although still, pretty damn cool. Right below us is a completely unused brush. For absolutely no reason, at least that I know of, the developers seem to have left behind an extra brush down here. But weirdly enough, it does seem to be cut into a very specific shape. So that makes me wonder if it is actually used at some point during the boss fight, and I just don't know. But as far as I can tell, it's not, and this is just left behind here for us to find. It's quite strange, although very cool. And maybe at one point this was actually the floor or something, but not sure, and I definitely have no explanation at this point for why this is here. But hey, maybe like those blue boxes, we'll figure it out at some point, and it'll make it into Dev Tricks and Secrets. But for now, that is it for me, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys enjoyed this sort of weird video on weird stuff. I thought it'd be fun to compile some of these things in a different format, and let me know down below if you guys enjoy it and want to see some more of these sort of videos. And with that being said, if you want to watch more of my content, you can click one of the videos on your screen right now, but if not, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Stay awesome, and peace out.